My stepbrother got a brand new truck for graduation, and I got a box of junk. You know those moments that split your life in two? Not the big obvious ones like car crashes or wedding days. I'm talking about the quiet ones that sneak up on you, grab you by the throat, and whisper, "Everything's different now." For me, that moment came at my high school graduation party in Butter Cove, Tennessee, population 4,872 and counting. Yeah, I know. Butter Cove. Try growing up with that address. I was 18, just graduated, and living in what used to be my childhood home, but felt more like Linda's kingdom these days. Linda, my stepmom, had swooped in 2 years after Mom passed. Started sweet, ended sour. Real sour. Like milk left in a car trunk in August. Her son, Kevin, was her golden boy. Star quarterback. For .0 GPA. The kind of kid who made parent wet their pants with pride. Me? I was a leftover. The mistake. The kid who preferred old vinyl records to Xbox. After Mom passed, all I had left were her records and that beat-up old turntable she played every weekend. Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys. Elvis crooning Love Me Tender. Etta James making you believe in heartbreak. Those records were our secret world. Mine and hers. Saturday mornings, she'd put on Jailhouse Rock and dance me around our tiny kitchen, spinning me like I was her little Elvis. The vinyl would crackle and pop, and she'd laugh, saying it sounded like an old friend clearing his throat. Man, I could smell those records. Like old books, but cooler, like leather and time and magic all mixed together. Linda tolerated Mom's stuff at first. Hell, she even helped me organize a collection when she was still playing the sweet stepmom card. But after she married Dad and moved Kevin in, things shifted. Suddenly, my records were clutter. My turntable was taking up space. I was taking up space. Dad, bless his heart, went along with it all. Grief makes you stupid, I guess. He'd lost the love of his life, and Linda was there with home-cooked meals and a smile that probably reminded him of better times. Kevin wasn't evil, just oblivious. Picture a golden retriever who's been told his whole life he's destined for greatness, and you've got the idea. He didn't mean to make me feel invisible. He just naturally occupied all the oxygen in any room. Football trophies, honor roll certificates, college acceptance letters. The fridge door looked like a Kevin shrine. My stuff? Shoved in the garage. The only bright spot in my life was Emma Martinez. We've been friends since kindergarten, when she'd punched Billy Thompson for stealing my lunch money. She was the kind of girl who made other girls jealous, and guys stupid. Smart as a whip, funny as hell, and completely out of my league. Except somehow, inexplicably, she wasn't. She hung out at my place. Listen to Mom's old record with me. Let me teach her the jitterbug in our driveway. Her mom, Judy, had been Mom's best friend since high school. They'd shared everything. Secrets, clothes, dreams of getting out of Butter Cove. When Mom died, Judy stepped up without being asked. So here's the thing about small-town graduation parties. Everyone comes. Your friends, their parents, that weird uncle who smells like cigarettes and tells inappropriate jokes. Linda had insisted on hosting, said it was a proper thing to do. Dad went along with it. Again, the backyard was decorated with balloons and a banner that read, "Congratulations, class of 2024. Judy brought her famous peach cobbler. Emma wore a sundress that made my brain short-circuit. Everything seemed normal until Linda clinked her glass for attention. She stood there in her Sunday best, beaming like she'd won the lottery. Next to her, Kevin looked like he already knew what was coming. Linda held up a set of car keys. Brand new GMC Sierra. Candy apple red. Sitting in our driveway with a bow on top, like a damn car commercial. The crowd oohed and ahed. Kevin hugged her, then Dad, then everyone within arm's reach. But wait, there's more, she announced. Full ride to UT Knoxville. Business degree. Everything paid for. Room, board, books, the works. More applause. More hugs. Kevin looked like he might cry. Happy tears, of course. Then Linda turned to me. I should have seen it coming. The way she smiled, all teeth and no warmth. She disappeared inside for a moment and came back carrying this dusty cardboard box. It looked like it had been in our attic since the Nixon administration. She set it down in front of me with a theatrical flourish. Tim, honey, I know you love old things, she said, her voice carrying across the yard. These belong to my eccentric Uncle Dale. Never married, lived alone, spent all his money on this memorabilia. She said memorabilia like it tasted bad. I've been meaning to throw them out, but then I thought, who better than Tim, our little historian? She lifted the lid. Inside were dozens of vinyl records, covered in dust and looking like they'd been through a garage sale tornado. The crowd laughed. Not mean laughter, exactly, but that uncomfortable titter when someone says something awkward and nobody knows how to respond. I stood there holding this box, feeling every pair of eyes on me. Someone pulled out their phone, started recording, because of course they did. Wow, Tim, you're like an 80-year-old trapped in an 18-year-old's body. Kevin called out, trying to be funny. More laughter, louder this time. Hey, at least he'll be popular at the nursing home. Someone else chimed in. Phones were definitely recording now. I could already imagine the TikToks and Instagram stories. I wanted to disappear. Wanted to melt into the ground like the Wicked Witch of the West. The weight of the box felt like it was crushing me, and all I could think about was Mom saying how life was like a record. Sometimes a needle gets stuck. Well, my needle was definitely stuck that night. Then Emma happened. She appeared at my side and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. You know what? Maybe these aren't just junk. Maybe someone's trash really is another person's treasure. She looked straight at Linda. Tim's been collecting records since he was a kid. He knows their value better than anyone here. The yard went quiet for a beat. Emma took my arm. Let's get these somewhere they'll be appreciated. As we walked away, I heard someone mutter, Why'd Linda have to make it so weird? I could hear Linda calling after us. But Emma just kept walking, leading me to her old Toyota pickup parked on the street. Judy appeared beside us, having witnessed the whole scene. She was carrying her empty casserole dish and had that look on her face, the one that said she'd seen enough. You two wait here, Judy said, unlocking her Honda Civic. I'll follow you wherever we're going. Emma, and I climbed into her truck. I'm getting the rest of my stuff. I told her, I'll go with you, she said. We walked back to the house. The party was still going, but the mood had shifted. People were pretending to have normal conversations, but I could feel their eyes following us as we went inside. In the house, I went straight to my room, started throwing clothes in a duffel bag, grabbing my phone charger, some books. In the living room, I could hear voices. Where do you think you're going, son? Dad's voice uncertain. I'm moving out, Dad. Oh, come on, Tim. It was just Linda having some fun. You know how she gets. He actually said that. Just Linda having some fun. It's okay, honey, Linda interrupted. He's 18 now. If he wants to leave, he can leave. Maybe it's time he figured out how the real world works. The silence that followed told me everything. Dad didn't argue, didn't tell her to stop. Just silent. I grabbed the last of my clothes and headed to the garage. Mom's old turntable was there, covered in dust, but still in working condition. I wrapped it carefully in a moving blanket. Next to it, her record collection, the good stuff, the real treasures, Johnny Cash, Patsy Cline, early Beatles. Not the junk Linda had given me, but the records Mom had actually loved. Emma helped me carry everything to the truck. Each trip past the living room, I could see Dad sitting there, shoulders slumped, while Linda held court with the remaining guests. On my last trip out, I caught Dad's eye. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but Linda touched his arm, and he looked away. That was the moment I knew it was really over. Not the public humiliation, not even leaving, but watching my father choose silence over standing up for me. We loaded everything into Emma's truck bed, my clothes, Mom's turntable, her records, and Linda's gift. The contrast wasn't lost on me. Real treasures and actual junk, all mixed together in the back of a Toyota. As we pulled away from the house, I could see the party continuing through the lit windows. People laughing, music playing, like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just been erased from my own life. You okay? Emma asked, glancing at me as we drove. I thought about it. Was I okay? I had just been publicly humiliated, essentially kicked out of my father's house, and abandoned by the one parent I had left. By all accounts, I should have been devastated. But you know what? Sitting in that truck, watching my childhood home disappear in the side mirror, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief, like I'd been holding my breath for 2 years and could finally exhale. Yeah, I said, surprising myself. I think I will be. Emma's house was only 10 minutes away, but it felt like crossing into another country. Judy was already there when we arrived, having taken a different route. She'd even opened the garage apartment, turned on the lights, made it look welcoming. It wasn't much, just a converted space above a 2-car garage, with old Star Wars posters still on the walls and a fold-out bed that probably creaked like an old ship. But it was quiet. It was mine, and it smelled like possibility instead of disappointment. We unloaded the truck in comfortable silence. Emma and Judy helped me carry everything upstairs, setting up the turntable in the corner where the afternoon light was best. Mom's records went on a makeshift shelf. Linda's box of records got shoved in the corner. I'd deal with those later. After everything was inside, the 3 of us sat on the little porch attached to the apartment, drinking iced tea Judy had brought up. The graduation party felt like something that had happened years ago instead of hours. You know, Judy said, looking out at the quiet neighborhood, your mama used to say that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what's really yours. I thought about that, about Mom's records, safe now, about Linda's gift, sitting unexamined in the corner, about Dad's silence and what it meant. I should probably go through those records Linda gave me at some point. I said more to myself than to them. Tomorrow, Emma said, tonight you just settle in, get used to the quiet. She was right. The box could wait. Right now, I just wanted to soak in this moment. The first real peace I'd felt in 2 years. Later, after Judy left and Emma headed back to the main house, I sat in my new room, listening to the quiet. No Kevin's video games through the walls. No Linda's fake cheerful voice calling everyone to dinner. No Dad pretending everything was normal. Just me, Mom's turntable, and that box of records in the corner. I glanced at it once, deciding it could wait. Tomorrow I'd listen through them, see what kind of music Uncle Dale had been into. Maybe I'd even find a few things I liked. Right now, I just want to put on one of Mom's records, Maybe at Last by Etta James, and let myself feel everything I've been holding back. The needle found the groove, and the music filled the small space. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in 2 years, felt like I could breathe. This wasn't an ending, I realized. This was my opening chord. And every good song needs a strong start. Uncle Dale's records could wait until morning. Right now, I was exactly where I needed to be. The morning after graduation felt like waking up in someone else's life. Better, somehow, for the first time in months, I woke up without that knot in my stomach, wondering what passive-aggressive thing Linda would say at breakfast. Instead, I could smell coffee brewing somewhere in the main house and heard footsteps on the walkway leading to my door. A knock came, soft and respectful. Tim, you awake? Got some breakfast when you're ready. Judy Martinez, Mom's best friend, the woman who'd stepped up without being asked, who'd opened her home to me without hesitation. I'd been worried about overstaying my welcome, but she'd shut down that conversation fast. The first morning I'd moved in, I'd mentioned finding a motel for a few days while I figured things out. Judy had actually gotten mad. You're Sarah's boy, she'd said, using Mom's name in that way that made my chest tighten. Your mama was my sister in every way but blood. You think I'm letting her son sleep in some ratty motel when I've got a perfectly good garage apartment. She lost her husband Pete 3 years ago. Heart attack, sudden and mean. The house had been too big and too quiet ever since. Besides, she'd added with a wry smile, old houses always need a man around. My gutters haven't been cleaned in 2 years, and that garage door's been squeaking like a haunted house. So I stayed. Not forever, I told myself. Just until I got on my feet. Found my own place. But Buttercove wasn't exactly overflowing with rental opportunities, and something about the garage apartment felt right. That's how it started. My new life in Judy's converted garage apartment. What Emma called the Death Star, mainly because of the massive Star Wars poster on the wall that had been there since before I was born. The fold-out bed creaked like a ship in a storm, but damn if it wasn't the most comfortable bed I'd slept in for 2 years. The garage apartment had character, that's for sure. Besides the Star Wars memorabilia, there were faded concert posters from the 70s and 80s, Fleetwood Mac, Led Zeppelin, even one from a Dolly Parton show in '82. The window facing east caught the morning sun perfectly, creating a little reading nook where I'd set up Mom's turntable. It wasn't much, but it felt like mine. Judy worked at Miller's Music Shop downtown, the kind of place that still sold actual CDs, and had a vinyl section that made collectors' hearts race. She'd leave for work at 9, always bring me a lunch she'd packed the night before. Emma had landed a job at Rosie's Cafe, slinging coffee and pie to the pre-church crowd. Me? I found work at Tommy's Auto Repair, 3 blocks away. Turned out high school shop class actually prepared you for something. You're helping more than you know, Judy had said one night when I'd insisted on paying rent. She'd refused, but finally accepted $50 a week for groceries. Having someone here who can fix a leaky faucet and mow the lawn without me asking, that's worth more than money. Living like this, we fell into a rhythm. I'd work on cars all day, grease under my fingernails, thinking about how much smoother Emma's old Toyota ran after I'd spent a Saturday afternoon with her engine. She'd text me updates about the town gossip she overheard at the cafe, who was getting married, who was getting divorced, who'd won big at the local poker game. We'd meet up for dinner, usually at Judy's, sometimes at the diner where Emma worked and could get us the employee discount. Best part of the day? Evening. After shower and dinner, Emma and I would hang out in the garage apartment. We'd put on records, real ones, not streaming. There's something different about vinyl. The ritual of it, the warmth of the sound, the way you have to flip it halfway through. Can't skip tracks. Can't shuffle. You experience the album the way the artist intended. One night in July, 3 weeks after I'd moved in, we were drinking homemade lemonade. Emma's grandmother's recipe, with just enough sugar to make your teeth hurt, when Emma spotted Linda's box of records in the corner. "What's the deal with Uncle Dale's collection?" she asked, tapping her bare foot against the cardboard. "Have you even listened to any of them?" I hadn't. Between work and settling in, I'd honestly forgotten about them. "Probably just old country stuff," I said. Linda called them junk for a reason. Emma got that look in her eye, the one she'd had since kindergarten, when she decided something needed investigating. "Come on, let's see what we've got. Maybe we can sell some on eBay, help you save up for a deposit on your own place or something." So we started digging. The box was even dustier than I remembered, and the records had that old cardboard smell mixed with something I couldn't identify, maybe cigarette smoke from decades past. Most of them were exactly what you'd expect from a small-town collector in the 60s. Johnny Cash, Patsy Cline, some bluegrass compilations. Nothing that would make anyone rich, but decent music. "Look at this one," Emma said, holding up an album with a torn corner. "Jim Reeves. My grandpa loved him. And check this out," I added, pulling out a gospel album. "The Statesman Quartet. Mom actually had this one too. Different pressing, though." That's when we heard Judy's car, in the driveway. She always worked late on Thursdays, staying to help with inventory. Emma went outside to meet her, calling, "Hey, Mom, come check out these old records with us." Judy entered the garage apartment, still in her Miller's Music Shop polo shirt, looking tired but curious. She settled into the old armchair we'd found at a yard sale, the one that matched nothing but was comfortable as hell. "What do we have here?" she asked, reaching for a record. "Oh, this takes me back. Your mom and I used to dance to this at the VFW hall." She held up a Loretta Lynn album. "Friday nights, after we both lied to our parents about where we were going." She spent the next hour telling us stories while we sorted records. How she and Mom had snuck out to see a traveling carnival when they were 16. How they'd gotten matching tattoos, tiny musical notes behind their left ears, on a dare during senior year. How they'd promised each other they'd get out of Buttercove and see the world, but life had other plans. "Your mama had this dream," Judy said, holding a glass of the lemonade Emma had refilled. She wanted to open a record store/cafe, play nothing but the good stuff, serve homemade pie. Say it would be like hanging out in her living room, but people would pay for the privilege. I'd never heard that story. Sitting there, listening to Judy paint pictures of Mom I'd never known, I felt connected to something bigger than just the two of us dancing in our kitchen. Emma yawned, stretching like a cat. I should probably head inside. Morning shift starts at 6. She kissed my cheek. We've been doing that lately. These casual kisses have felt like more than friendship, but less than whatever came next. Night, Mom. Night, Tim, she said, squeezing my shoulder she passed. Don't stay up too late with the records. After she left, I kept going through the records while Judy dozed in the armchair. That's when I found it. At the very bottom of the box, wrapped in an old towel, was a record with no sleeve. Just a plain white paper cover with handwriting in faded blue ink. Elvis Presley, Sun Records test press, and some production notes that looked like they were written in pencil. Judy, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, look at this. She leaned forward, adjusting her reading glasses. The drowsiness vanished from her face. Oh, my word. Tim, let me see that again. We carried it carefully to the turntable, handling it like it might disintegrate. The label on the actual record was different from anything I'd seen. Simple, almost primitive looking. That's All Right on one side, Blue Moon of Kentucky on the other, July 5th, 1954. I lowered the needle. The sound that came out wasn't the Elvis I knew. This was raw, urgent, almost dangerous. You could hear the room, the musicians, this energy that felt like lightning in a bottle. It was like listening to the moment rock and roll was born. Judy sat back in the chair, her hand over her mouth. We let the whole record play, both sides, sitting in silence. Tim, she finally said, I think you might have something really special here. What do you mean? Sun Records test presses they're like the holy grail for collectors. They made so few of them, just for the studio and maybe a couple radio stations. Most got destroyed or lost over the years. I felt my stomach do that thing it does on roller coasters, right before the big drop. How special are we talking? Judy pulled out her phone, started searching. Let me call someone. I know a guy in Memphis. He used to come into the shop when I worked in Nashville. If anyone would know what this is worth, it's him. She dialed while I sat there, running my fingers along the edge of the record. This thing had been sitting in Linda's attic, probably for decades. Uncle Dale had wrapped it in a towel, kept it separate from the other records. He'd known. Harold? It's Judy Martinez from Miller's Music. Yeah, it's been a while. Listen, I need your expertise on something. We got what appears to be an original Sun Records test pressing of Elvis's first recordings. I watched her face change as she listened. Her eyes got wider. Her free hand started fidgeting with her reading glasses. July 5th, 1954? Yes, both sides. No, not the picture sleeve version. The plain white one, original pressing. Single number 209. The conversation lasted maybe 3 more minutes, but it felt like hours. When she hung up, Judy just sat there for a moment, phone still in her hand. He wants us to bring it to Memphis, she finally said. He needs to authenticate it. But if it's real, what? Tim, honey, if this is what he thinks it is, you might be holding the first rock and roll recording ever pressed. One of maybe 5 copies in existence. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. What's that mean? Money-wise. He wouldn't say over the phone, but he sounded pretty excited. We carefully slipped the record back into its plain cover, then into a protective sleeve Judy had brought from her car. The rest of Uncle Dale's collection suddenly seemed insignificant. All those other records, Patsy Cline, Johnny Cash, the gospel albums, they were nice, but this was different. This was history. I thought about Linda, how she'd handed me this box like it was trash. About Dad, sitting there letting it happen. About Kevin with his new truck and paid for college. When can we go to Memphis? I asked. I'll call in sick tomorrow, Judy said. We can drive down first thing in the morning. I'll let Emma know about this. She's probably still awake studying. I'm sure she'll want to come with us. Judy, I started feeling that familiar guilt creeping in. I don't want to impose. You've already done so much, letting me stay here, helping with all this. She cut me off with a wave of her hand. Tim, you're not a burden. Your mama was the sister I never had. Taking care of you? It's what she'd do if our roles were reversed. Her voice softened. Besides, this house has been too quiet since Pete died. Having you here, fixing things, bringing life back into it. You're doing me a favor. That hit me harder than I expected. For all my worry about overstaying my welcome, I'd never considered that maybe Judy needed this as much as I did. Later, after Judy had gone inside and I was lying on the fold-out bed, I kept thinking about that moment, the needle hitting the groove, that raw Elvis voice filling the room. How sometimes the most valuable things come disguised as junk. Mom used to say music was a time machine, that it could take you anywhere. Listening to that record, I felt like I'd traveled back to 1954, to some small studio in Memphis where something magic was happening and nobody quite knew it yet. I got up and looked out the window toward my old house, 3 streets over. All the lights were off except one upstairs, probably Kevin playing video games. I wondered if Dad was awake, maybe feeling guilty, if Linda had any idea what she'd accidentally given away. The funny thing about revenge, sometimes it finds you when you're not even looking for it. I'd left that house expecting nothing, and now I might be holding something worth. Well, Harold wouldn't say over the phone, but Judy's reaction told me it was significant. Emma's text came through at midnight. Mom just told me everything about the record. Holy shit, I can't believe it. I'm calling in sick tomorrow. There's no way you're doing this without me. I texted back, thought you needed the money from your shifts. Some things are more important than slinging coffee. Besides, if this record is what Mom thinks, you're buying dinner Memphis. Deal, I replied. Thanks for everything, Em. Seriously. That's what friends are for. Now get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. I set the alarm for 6, though I knew I wouldn't sleep much. That record was 40 feet away from me, wrapped in a towel, waiting to change everything. I kept imagining Linda's face when she found out. The look Dad would get when he realized the silence had cost more than he'd thought. But mostly I thought about Mom, about how she'd always believed in surprising packages and second chances, how she'd probably be laughing somewhere, watching all this unfold. The garage creaked as it cooled off in the day's heat, and somewhere in the distance, a train whistle sounded. The 12:30 to Nashville, like clockwork. For the first time since graduation, I felt like I had a story worth telling. Tomorrow we'd drive to Memphis. Tomorrow we'd find out if Uncle Dale's junk was actually a treasure that could change my life. Tomorrow everything might be different. But tonight, lying in this converted garage that had become more of a home than anywhere I'd lived in 2 years, I realized I already had everything I needed. The record was just bonus. Still, I couldn't help smiling as I drifted off. Linda was going to lose her mind. 6 a.m. came too early, but the adrenaline was already pumping. I'd barely slept, my mind spinning with what-ifs and calculations. When Judy knocked on the garage door, Emma was already with her, both looking as wired as I felt. We were doing this. Actually doing this. Road trip to Memphis. Emma announced, holding up a thermos of coffee and a bag of gas station donuts. Mom's car is gassed up and ready. I even brought snacks. Judy had borrowed a proper record carrying case from a music shop, the kind with foam padding that collectors use for their most precious albums. We'd slipped Uncle Dale's mysterious Elvis pressing inside, along with the original white sleeve and some documentation we'd printed about the history of Sun Records. The drive to Memphis usually takes about 4 hours from Buttercove, but that morning it felt like we were driving toward destiny. Judy's Honda wasn't exactly built for style, but it ran smooth and had a decent stereo. We'd made a mixtape. Yes, an actual cassette tape that Emma had found in a thrift store, loaded with Elvis hits, Sun Records artists, and songs Mom used to love. As we hit Highway 78, heading west into the rising sun, I couldn't help but notice how different this felt from any family road trip I'd ever taken. No tense silence. No passive-aggressive comments about my music choices. Just 3 people who genuinely wanted to be there, driving towards something that might change everything. You know what's crazy? Emma said from the passenger seat, turning down Mystery Train to talk. 24 hours ago, we were sorting through what we thought was Uncle Dale's junk. Now we're driving to Memphis with what might be one of the rarest records ever made. We stopped for gas at this old station outside of Corinth, Mississippi, the kind with a hand-painted sign, and a bell that actually rings when you drive over the hose. Emma went inside to pay while Judy and I stood by the car, watching the sun climb higher, making everything look golden and possible. "Tim," Judy said, leaning against the Honda's hood, "I want you to know something. Whatever happens today, you've already won." "What do you mean?" "You walked away from a situation that was killing your spirit. You're making your own choices now. That's worth more than any record." Before I could respond, Emma came back with sodas and Slim Jims, doing this terrible Elvis impression that made us all laugh. We kept driving, the landscape changing from hills to delta flatland, cotton fields stretching toward the horizon. About an hour outside Memphis, something shifted in the car. The nervous energy turned into quiet determination. We were getting close to answers. The GPS kept counting down the miles, and with each one, the reality of what might happen grew more intense. What if it's fake? I finally asked, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at me since we left. "Then we had a great day trip," Judy said simply. "But Tim, Harold's been doing this for 30 years. He doesn't get excited about fakes." Emma reached back on the front seat and squeezed my shoulder. "And if it's real, we figure out what comes next. Together." That's when we saw it. A weathered green sign that read Memphis City Limits with a smaller sign underneath, "Home of the Blues and Birthplace of Rock and Roll." Harold's office was in an old building on Beale Street, sandwiched between a barbecue joint and a guitar shop. The kind of place where you had to buzz to get in, where the walls were covered with gold records and faded concert posters. It smelled like lemon oil and old paper, the smell of music history. Harold himself looked like he'd walked out of a record album cover from 1975. Long gray beard, wire-rimmed glasses, vest covered in music pins. He spent 15 minutes just examining the record under a magnifying glass, checking the matrix numbers, studying the wax itself. We waited, barely breathing. "Where did you say you found this?" he asked, still staring at the record. "My stepmom's uncle left it to her," I said. "She gave it to me as a graduation gift." "Did she now?" Harold's expression was unreadable. "And she just gave it away?" The next hour was a masterclass in record collecting that I never knew I needed. Harold explained how Sun Records operated, how Sam Phillips had been looking for a white singer who could sing like a black man, how Elvis had walked into that studio in July of 1954 and changed everything. Test pressings like this were only made for the engineers and maybe a few radio DJs, he said, holding the record up to the light. Most were destroyed when the decision was made to put out the official release. The fact that this one survived in this condition, he trailed off, walking to his desk, pulling out a thick reference book, started flipping pages, cross-referencing something. "Boys and girls," he finally said, "you might have just walked into my office with one of the holy grails of rock and roll collecting." The room went absolutely silent. Emma grabbed my hand. Judy sat down heavily in a chair. Harold made a phone call, then another. Then he picked up his desk phone and started dialing a number that seemed to go on forever. "Jack, it's Harold. Remember that Sun Records 209 we've been looking for? I think I found one." "No, I'm serious." "Yes," test pressing. "Condition is, well, it's almost perfect." The conversation went on for maybe 10 minutes, with Harold describing matrix numbers and catalog details that meant nothing to me, but clearly meant everything to whoever was on the other end. When he hung up, his hands were actually shaking a little. "We need to get this authenticated at the main office," he said. "Today. Now. They want to run a full analysis. Check the wax composition, the stamping methods, everything. If this is what I think it is." "What you think it is, exactly?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. Son, you might be holding the first #1 hit in rock and roll history. Original Matrix. First pressing. One of 5 copies that were supposed to exist, though most people thought all of them were lost. Emma actually squeaked. A full-on squeak, like a cartoon character. And the value? Judy asked carefully. Harold took off his glasses, cleaned them slowly. If the authentication checks out, and I'm betting it will, we're talking about a piece that collectors have been hunting for since the 70s. Major auction houses have been waiting for one of these to surface. He paused, looking each of us in the eye. Conservative estimate? 6 million. Maybe more, depending on how crazy the bidding gets. The world tilted, like literally tilted. I had to grab the edge of Harold's desk to keep from falling over. $6 million. The kind of money I couldn't even properly conceptualize. The kind of money that changes not just your life, but your entire family's trajectory. There's more, Harold continued, and I thought I was going to throw up. How could there be more? If you decide to sell, and I'm not saying you should, we want to do this right. Major auction, Christie's or Sotheby's, full media coverage. This would be a historic event in the collecting community. Emma was crying, actually crying. Happy tears, scared tears, overwhelmed tears, all of them at once. Judy looked like she was praying, her lips moving silently. Me? I just stood there, holding this piece of vinyl that could change everything. The authentication process took 3 hours. They brought in specialists, used equipment that looked like it belonged in a laboratory, took photos of every groove and pressing mark. While we waited, Harold walked us through what a major auction would look like, how the media attention would work, what kind of preparation we'd need. You'll want to think about this carefully, he said. Once this goes public, your lives are going to change. Media attention. People coming out of the woodwork claiming connections to the record, to Uncle Dale. It can get complicated. I thought about Dad, about Linda, about Kevin. They had no idea what had just happened. Right now, we were in this bubble where only Harold and his team knew. That would change the moment we decided to auction, but for now, it was our secret. When you say 6 million, Emma started. That's conservative. Christie's handled a sale last year for a Beatles acetate that went for 4.8 million, and that was just a demo. This is the birth of rock and roll. The King's first recording, in perfect condition. Gentlemen, lady, the lead authenticator said, sounding like he was about to deliver a verdict. This is indeed an authentic Sun Records test pressing of catalog number 209, dating from July 1954. The matrix numbers match our records. The wax composition is consistent with Sun's manufacturing process from that period, and the recording quality matches the known characteristics of Elvis Presley's voice from these sessions. He paused for effect, and I swear time stopped. This is the real deal, and it's about as perfect a condition as we've ever seen for a record of this age and significance. Emma grabbed my face and kissed me. Full-on kiss me, right there in Harold's office, with everyone watching. When she pulled back, she was laughing and crying at the same time. $6 million, Tim. Do you understand what this means? Harold connected us with Christie's auction house in New York. They flew down specialists to meet with us the next day, to explain the process, to sign papers that seemed to go on forever. The auction was set for 3 weeks out, with a week of previews and media coverage leading up to it. We kept it quiet. I told Tommy at the auto shop that I needed to handle some family business. Emma took a leave from the cafe. Judy arranged time off from Miller's Music. We spent those 3 weeks preparing, meeting with Christie's team, learning about the media circus that was about to descend. Once this hits the news, the Christie's publicist warned us, your life changes forever. Everyone will know. Everyone will care. Everyone will want a piece. The morning of the auction, we flew to New York. First class. Christie's covered everything. They put us up in a hotel that probably cost more per night than Judy's house payment. The auction room was like something from a movie, all with paneling and serious faces. People raising paddles like they were ordering coffee. When our lot came up, I thought I might literally die from stress. The bidding started at 3 million and immediately jumped to 4. Then 5. Paddles flying. The auctioneer's voice getting faster, numbers climbing in increments that represented cars, houses, entire lives. When the gavel finally came down, I was squeezing Emma's hand so hard she probably had bruises for a week. Final price, $6.2 million. After Christie's commission and taxes, I clear about $4.5 million. More money than I'd probably see in 10 lifetimes working at Tommy's Auto Repair. Money that changed everything. The media coverage was immediate and intense. By the time we landed back in Nashville that evening, my phone was blowing up with missed calls and texts. Numbers I didn't recognize. CNN had already run a story. Rolling Stone magazine wanted an interview. Entertainment Tonight was calling. And then, as our plane touched down, a familiar number appeared on my screen. Mom's old number. The house phone. Dad. Tim, this is your father. His voice sounded strange, like he wasn't sure what to say. My stomach dropped. The secret was out. The whole world knew. How did you find out? It's all over the news, son. Every channel. You sold Elvis's first record for $6 million. I could hear Linda in the background, her voice rising in pitch as she realized what this meant. Yeah, Dad, I did. That record, that was in the box Linda gave you? The box of junk. Yeah, the worthless memorabilia from Uncle Dale that she wanted to throw away. Silence on his end. Then, Tim, we need to talk. Linda's, well, she's pretty upset. I looked at Emma, at Judy, at the life we were building, at the choices I got to make now. Instead of having them made for me. I bet she is, Dad. I bet she is. I hung up before he could say more. Emma squeezed my hand as our rental car pulled up to the airport. Ready for this? She asked. No, I admitted, but let's do it anyway. The next few days were a blur. Lawyers started calling, some representing us, some representing people who suddenly claimed connections to Uncle Dale, to the record, to my family. Linda hired a lawyer who sent threatening letters claiming she'd been coerced into giving away valuable property. The local news stations camped out on Judy Street. But in the quiet moments, when we managed to escape the chaos we planned, the record store would be called Sarah's Spin, after Mom. We'd found the perfect location, a former hardware store on Main Street with big windows and original hardwood floors. Emma had already started designing the logo, incorporating both vinyl records and coffee cups. The first thing I did was set up a college fund for Emma. Full ride to wherever she wanted to go, plus living expenses. She cried for an hour when I told her, kept saying she couldn't accept it, that was too much. I finally convinced her by reminding her that without her pushing me to go through Uncle Dale's box, we never would have found the record. A week after the auction, I was sitting in the garage apartment, Mom's old turntable playing something soft and blues-y, when Emma knocked on the door. Got a minute? She asked, looking nervous. She sat next to me on the fold-out bed, fidgeting with her coffee mug. I need to tell you something, she said. The way I feel about you, it's not just friendship anymore. It hasn't been for a while. And with everything that's happened, with all these changes, I didn't want to wait any longer to say it. I kissed her then, really kissed her, and it felt like everything was falling into place. Like every crazy twist that had brought us to this moment had been worth it. The next morning, Judy's phone rang early. Too early. She answered with her usual cheerful greeting, but her expression changed instantly. She handed me the phone, mouthing, "It's Linda." "Hello, Linda. Those millions belong to me." Her voice was so loud, I had to hold the phone away from my ear. That was my family's record. "You stole it. I'm suing you. I'm taking you to court." I looked at Emma, at Judy, at the town I'd grown up in, at the life I was building, at the choices I got to make now, instead of having them made for me. "Linda," I said calmly, "you gave me that box of records in front of about 50 witnesses, many of whom filmed it. You called them junk and said you wanted to throw them away. There's literally video evidence of this on about 12 different Instagram accounts." Silence on the other end. "Then I want half. It's only fair. I'm the reason you even got the records." "Tell you what," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. I'll give you exactly what you thought those records were worth when you gave them to me. Which is nothing. You thought they were worthless junk, remember? You were doing me a favor by letting me take your trash. I hung up before she could respond. Emma high-fived me. Judy poured a round of celebratory sweet tea. The lawyer's letters kept coming, but they all said the same thing Linda's lawyer had already told her. She had no legal claim. She'd given away the records in public, calling them worthless. Multiple witnesses, video documentation, and her own words worked against her. More importantly, we started transforming that old hardware store into Sarah's Spin. We hired local contractors, people who'd known Mom, who remembered dancing with her at the VFW hall. Every day brought us closer to making her dream real. Dad called a few more times. Each call was awkward, full of pauses and half apologies. I wasn't ready to forgive him yet, but I wasn't hanging up immediately anymore either. Progress, I guess. Kevin actually stopped by the garage apartment one afternoon, looking uncomfortable in his fancy new truck. I just wanted to say congratulations, he said, standing awkwardly by his driver's door. What you're doing with the money, the store and everything, it's cool. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd expected from him. Tomorrow we'd officially sign the lease on Sarah's Spin. Tomorrow we'd start turning Mom's dream into reality. Tomorrow Linda's lawyers would probably send more threatening letters that wouldn't mean anything. But tonight, everything was perfect. The record player was spinning. Emma was sleeping with her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The needle found a scratch in the vinyl, skipped for a moment, then kept playing. Just like life, I thought. Sometimes you skip, but the music keeps going. Linda was going to be so pissed tomorrow, and I was absolutely fine with that. 6 weeks after the auction changed everything, construction crews were finishing up the last details on our dream. The old hardware store had been completely transformed, and we were days away from opening Sarah's Spin. The smell of fresh paint mixed with the vintage wood polish we'd used on the original floors created something entirely new, the scent of possibility. Emma stood in what would be our main cafe area, directing the installation of our custom-built record listening stations. Each booth had its own vintage turntable and comfortable seating, designed for people to lose themselves in music the way our generation had nearly forgotten. Think we ordered enough vinyl for opening day? I asked, surveying the hundreds of boxes that had arrived from distributors and collectors across the country. There's no such thing as enough vinyl, Judy called from behind the counter, where she was training on our new commercial espresso machine. But this should get us started. We'd spent the last month and a half assembling a team. Judy had taken early retirement from Miller's Music Shop to run our cafe side. Emma quit her job at Rosie's to handle marketing and events. I'd given Tommy 2 weeks' notice. Didn't feel right leaving him hanging, especially with all the transmission work we had lined up. That first morning as we prepared to open, I stood in front of the massive vinyl wall display, tracing the letters of our logo with my finger. Emma had designed something perfect, a record melting into a coffee cup, with Sarah's Spin written in vintage script. "You ready for this?" she asked, appearing at my elbow with 2 cups of the coffee that would make us famous. "Do we have everything?" I asked, suddenly nervous. "The listening stations are working? The registers are connected? The initial inventory is cataloged." She kissed my cheek. "Everything's perfect. Well, except for one thing." "What?" "We still need to test the main sound system. Want to play something special for the opening." I smiled, knowing exactly what record to choose. We had a high-quality repress of the Sun Records recording. Not the original test pressing we'd sold, but a version that captured the same raw energy. We placed it on the main turntable, and that familiar electric sound of young Elvis filled the empty shop. For a moment, it was just the 3 of us, Emma, Judy, and me, dancing in the space before the world rushed in. Then the doorbell chimed. 7 a.m. sharp. Mrs. Henderson, my 3rd-grade teacher, stood in the doorway holding a reusable shopping bag and beaming like she'd won the lottery. "I've been waiting outside for 20 minutes, she announced. "I wanted to be your first customer." The line behind her stretched halfway down Main Street. What happened over the next 6 hours defied everything we'd imagined. Word had spread not just through Buttercove, But across Tennessee, music bloggers, vinyl collectors, and curiosity seekers showed up alongside our neighbors. People weren't just buying records, they were experiencing them. I watched a teenager discover Led Zeppelin for the first time, her eyes wide as she listened to Stairway to Heaven on the headphones. An elderly couple spent an hour in our first dance section, playing 45s from the 50s and holding hands. "This is better than I dreamed," Judy murmured during a rare quiet moment, watching the crowd from behind the coffee bar. Then the door opened, and the energy in the room shifted. Linda walked in. She brought reinforcements this time. Not just her lawyer from before, but a woman in a sharp suit who had legal team lead written all over her. "Where's your manager?" Linda demanded, loud enough for half the cafe to hear. "That would be me," I said, walking over from the vinyl wall. "Hi, Linda. Come to shop or cause scene. Don't get cute with me, Tim. This business is built on stolen property, and everyone here needs to know it." The cafe went dead quiet. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward us, including several that belonged to people recording with their phones. "Actually," I said, pulling out my own phone, "this seems like a good time for a public service announcement." I tapped open the video from graduation night, turning the volume up. Linda's voice echoed through the shop. "Tim, honey, I know you love old things. These belong to my eccentric Uncle Dale. I've been meaning to throw them out." The crowd murmured as the video played. Linda giving me the box, calling it junk, laughing along with everyone else. "So just to be clear," I said when the video ended, "you gave me these records publicly, calling them worthless trash that you want to get rid of. Now that one turned out to be valuable. You want it back." Linda's face reddened. "I didn't know what they were worth." "That's not Tim's fault, ma'am," called out someone from the coffee line. I turned to see it was Tommy from the auto shop, still in his work clothes. "And that's what these papers say," Linda's lawyer added, though she looked uncomfortable. "Our client maintained she was misled about the value of the items." "By who?" Emma asked, stepping up beside me. "By herself? She's the one who labeled them as junk to throw away. I want half the money," Linda declared, her voice rising. "And I want this business shut down. It's all stolen from my family." That's when something beautiful happened. The crowd started laughing. Not mean-spirited mockery, but the kind of laughter that happens when someone's being so obviously ridiculous that you can't help yourself. "Ma'am," called out one of our teenage customers, "there's literally video of you giving away on, everyone's Instagram." "You also said it was trash," added Mrs. Henderson. "I was there. I filmed it too." Linda's lawyer tugged on her arm. "Ms. Patterson, perhaps we should discuss our options privately." "I'm not done." Linda shouted. "Those millions should be mine." "You know what?" I said, reaching into my pocket. I pulled out $5, walked over, and handed it to her. "Here, this is what trash would be worth at a garage sale. Consider yourself paid in full." The place erupted. Applause, cheers, and several people actually filming Linda's reaction as her face turned purple. She stormed out, lawyers trailing behind, and we never saw her in Buttercove again. The energy in the room shifted immediately back to celebration mode. A few days later, on a quieter Wednesday afternoon when the lunch rush had died down, the door opened with a hesitant chime. Dad walked in. We hadn't spoken since that awkward phone call right after the auction. I knew he'd divorced Linda. Kevin had told me in one of his occasional texts. But seeing him here, hat in hand, stirred up emotions I hadn't expected. The shop was dotted with afternoon regulars. But suddenly all I could focus on was this man who'd been absent for so long. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. We found a corner table, away from the bustle. He ordered black coffee. No surprise there, and sat uncomfortably for a moment before starting. "I've been practicing what to say for weeks," he began. "I figured you'd open eventually, and I'd come in and we'd talk. But now that I'm here..." He paused, fidgeting with his cup. "Tim, I failed you. After your mom died, I didn't know how to be alone with my grief. Linda made it easier to avoid dealing with everything. But in trying to fill the hole your mom left, I let Linda push you out." His voice cracked slightly. Watching that video of graduation, not just Linda humiliating you, but me sitting there doing nothing, I realized I'd become the kind of father your mom would have been ashamed of. We sat in silence for a moment. The cafe hummed around us, orders being called, records being played, life continuing. Dad, I finally said, Mom used to say that music was like life. Sometimes the needle skips, but the song keeps playing if you don't give up on it. His eyes watered. She was always the wiser one. We got some skips in our song, I admitted, but maybe we can keep playing. He reached across the table, and I met him halfway. It wasn't everything fixed instantly, but it was a start. Over following months, Dad became a regular at Sarah's Spin. He'd stop by most days, ordering his coffee and reading the paper in what became his corner booth. Sometimes we'd talk. Sometimes we'd just exist in the same space, slowly rebuilding something that had been broken. And something unexpected started happening. I noticed Dad and Judy talking more. Not just order-taking conversations, but real dialogue. They'd stand by the espresso machine, sharing stories about Mom that I'd never heard, laughing at inside jokes from their shared history. They're spending a lot of time together. Emma observed one evening as we closed up, "Is that weird?" I asked, unpacking a box of new arrivals. "Not weird," she said thoughtfully. They both loved her. They both understand that kind of loss. 3 months after we opened, Dad came in looking more nervous than the day he'd first asked to talk. "Tim, Emma," he said, gesturing to the booth he and Judy had been occupying. "We need to tell you something." Judy was blushing, actually blushing, and Dad couldn't stop fidgeting with his coffee cup. "We've been spending time together," Judy began. "At first it was just about Sarah, your mom, and missing her. But lately, we want to get married," Dad blurted out, then immediately backtracked. "But we wanted to make sure you two were okay with it. I know it might seem strange." I looked at Emma, who was already tearing up, then at Judy, who had been more of a parent to me in the last year than Dad had been in the previous 2, then at Dad, who looked like a teenager asking permission for a first date. "Dad," I said slowly, "Mom always said you had terrible timing." His face fell, and Judy reached for his hand. "But," I continued, grinning now, "she also said life was too short not to grab happiness when it finds you." Understanding dawned on his face. Judy started crying. Emma full-on ugly cried. "Besides," Emma added through her tears, "think of how great the staff meetings will be. We're literally merging families and businesses." We all laughed then, and it felt like a harmony finally clicking into place. Sarah's Spin became everything we'd hoped and more. 6 months after opening, we were featured in Southern Living for Best New Music Destination. Vinyl collectors started making pilgrimages. Touring musicians would stop by when they passed through. The cafe side took off beyond our wildest expectations. Judy's vintage-inspired menu and coffee pairing recommendations became local legend. On our first anniversary, we threw a massive block party. 3 food trucks, live music on a stage borrowed from the VFW, and a vinyl swap meet that stretched 2 blocks down Main Street. That's when I realized we'd built something bigger than a business. We'd created community. People were dancing to the Temptations in the street. Kids were running around with glow sticks while their parents traded records they'd kept since college. Dad and Judy, now married, were teaching anyone who'd listen how to properly slow dance. As the sun set and the party shifted into evening mode, I found myself standing by Mom's original turntable, still in its place of honor near the front window, with Emma beside me. "You know what's crazy?" I said, watching our world dance under string lights and stars. "What?" "This time last year, I thought my life was over, kicked out, humiliated, nowhere to go. And now I've got a business, the most amazing girlfriend in the world, a dad who actually talks to me, and Judy who's been more family to me than anyone has in years." "Literally a couple million," Emma pointed out. "Well, that's what's left after all this. But who's counting?" We watched the party continue around us. Our people, our place, our impossibly good fortune built on what Linda had called trash. "Emma?" I said, turning to face her. "Yeah." Marry me? She laughed. That sound that had become the soundtrack to every good moment in my life. I thought you'd never ask. Is that a yes? Obviously it's a yes. But I get to plan the wedding, and it's happening right here in the shop. Deal. She kissed me then, in front of everyone, and the party cheered even louder. Someone cranked up "Here Comes the Sun," and suddenly everyone was dancing again. Later that night, after the last guest had gone home and we'd started the massive cleanup, Dad found me in the back office, counting cash from a register. "You did good, son," he said simply. "We all did. This is everyone's place, not just mine. Your mom would be proud of the business, but more of who you became." I looked at him, really looked, and saw something I hadn't in years. Not just my father, but a man who'd found his way back from grief to joy. "Dad, yeah, thanks for saying yes to Judy. I like having a family again." He hugged me then, the kind of hug I remember from before Mom got sick. When we pulled apart, we were both a little misty, but the good kind of misty. "Get out of here," he said. "Your fiancé's waiting, and you've got a wedding to plan." The wedding happened 3 months later, right here in Sarah's Spin. We moved the record bins against the walls, set up chairs between the listening stations, and decorated with every vintage concert poster we could find. The whole town showed up. Emma walked down the aisle to Judy singing, "At Last," while I stood by the main counter, trying not to cry and failing spectacularly. Dad, who'd gotten ordained online just for this, performed the ceremony. Even Kevin showed up, though he kept to the back and left right after we cut the cake. "I always knew records were magic," Emma said in her vows. "But they didn't become real magic until you showed me that sometimes the most valuable things look like junk until you examine them. You saved me from the worst graduation gift in history." I said back, getting a laugh from crowd. "More than that, you showed me that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something beautiful." After the ceremony, we pushed the chairs aside and filled the room with music. Dad and Judy led off the dancing to "The Way You Look Tonight." Soon everyone was moving, from Mrs. Henderson attempting something that might have been the Charleston to teenagers showing off moves that probably hadn't been invented when our records were made. Late that night, alone in the shop with just the cleaning up left to do, Emma and I slow danced to a scratchy recording of Unforgettable. The display lights cast everything in warm yellow, making the space look like an old photograph. "Think we'll look back on this someday and laugh about how small we were thinking?" Emma asked. Probably, I admitted, but small is good. Small is manageable. Small is exactly the size of happiness I want. We danced until the record ended, then started another one, then another, until the sun came up and we remembered we had a business to run. The next 2 years flew by in a blur of expanded inventory, customer events, and building something that had started as Mom's dream, but become entirely our own. We added a second location in Nashville, not on Music Row, but in a neighborhood that reminded us of home. Same concept, different city, instant success. But the story doesn't end with business expansion or even wedded bliss. It ends, if stories like this ever really end, with a moment 18 months after our wedding. I was closing up shop on a quiet Tuesday evening when Emma walked in from her doctor's appointment. She had that look, the one that says everything's about to change. "So," she said, settling into the armchair by Mom's turntable, "remember how we talk about expanding?" "Sure. Nashville's doing great, and we've been looking at Memphis." I meant expanding in a different way. She handed me a small gift-wrap box. Inside was a baby rattle made to look like a tiny vinyl record. Really, you're going to be a dad." I sat heavily in the chair opposite her, staring at the rattle. "When?" 7 months, right around Christmas. We sat there in the quiet shop, listening to the soft jazz that always played during closing time, processing the enormity of this change. "You know what's funny?" I finally said. "This all started because Linda thought she was humiliating me. Now we're about to bring another person into this crazy, beautiful life she accidentally gave us. Think the kid will like vinyl? With our genes, kid won't have a choice." We laughed, imagining tiny hands learning to flip records, little feet dancing on these same wooden floors. 7 months later, on December 23rd, Sarah Judith Anderson came into the world screaming her lungs out. The first thing she heard, beside hospital noise and exhausted parents, was Etta James singing At Last from my phone. Really? Emma asked weakly from the delivery bed. She needs to know from day one that life comes with soundtrack. Our daughter's eyes opened, barely slits in her scrunch-red face, and I swear she looked right at the phone speaker before settling down. Look at that, the nurse said. She knows good music. Better get used to it, Judy said, appearing in the doorway with Dad and enough baby gear to stock a store. She's going to grow up surrounded by it. That was 5 years ago, from my perspective now. Today, little Sarah basically runs Sarah's Spin. She knows the regulars by name, can operate a turntable better than most of our college-age employees, and has strong opinions about which records go where. Daddy, she announced one afternoon while reorganizing the children's music section with the intensity of a museum curator. We need more Motown. Why is that, sweetheart? Because dancing makes people happy, and happy people buy more records. I looked at Emma, who was training our newest employee behind the counter, a kid who reminded me of myself at 18, all nervous energy and encyclopedic music knowledge. She's got your business sense, I told her, and your music obsession. 10 years after that graduation party changed everything, Sarah's Spin ran 3 successful locations across Tennessee. The original in Buttercove remain our flagship and heart, the place where it all began and where we still tested every new idea. Linda never came back, though we heard through Kevin that she spoke bitterly about us to anyone who'd listen. She married a retiree in Florida and spent her days telling anyone who'd listen how her ungrateful stepson stole her inheritance. Kevin visited sometimes, had gotten over most of his issues, and genuinely seemed proud of what we'd built. Dad and Judy lived in the house where I grew up, having renovated it into something warm and welcoming. They spent their evenings at the shop, Dad reading in his corner booth while Judy worked behind the counter. Nights found them at home listening to the records they collected over the years, planning their next adventure. There was this one Tuesday evening that stands out in my memory. I was standing in Sarah's Spin, watching my daughter attempt to teach her grandfather how to properly cue a record without scratching it. The shop was in that magic hour between day and evening, when the light slanted just right and everything glowed golden. Emma finished up with her last customer, an older man buying the Beatles' White Album because he wanted to hear it the way it was meant to be heard, and caught my eye across the room. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, joining me by the front window. About that box of records, I admitted about how Linda thought she was punishing me, but accidentally gave me everything. Everything good that happened came from that moment. Everything. The money was just paper. The real treasure was what we built with it. I put my arm around her waist as we watched Sarah show Dad the proper way to handle vinyl. "Never touch the grooves," she was saying in her most serious voice. "Only the edges and the label. You know what Elvis said?" I asked Emma, "What?" "Don't dream it, do it." And did we do it? We did it. We're still doing it. The bell above the door chimed as our final customer left for the day. Time to lock up, count the register, prepare for tomorrow. But for just a moment longer, we stood there watching our daughter teach her grandfather something he should have known all along, listening to the soft strains of whatever record was spinning, grateful for a box of junk that turned out to be everything. Sometimes the needle skipped. Sometimes the vinyl scratched. But if you kept playing the music, if you didn't give up on the song, you might just find that the B-side was even better than the A-side. And sometimes, just sometimes, someone's trash really was another person's treasure. Worth way more than $6 million. Worth everything, actually,